Hello and welcome to Return to Regalia, an Underland Chronicles reread podcast. I'm Oona.
And I'm Nate.
Today we'll be covering chapters 16, 17, and 18 of The Curse of the Warmbloods, in which the questers discover the joys of bubblegum and the horrors of giant carnivorous plants.
The epic highs and lows of traversing the jungle.
The agony and the ecstasy.
Yes.
Nate, I am so excited to cover these chapters.
Mm-hmm. You've been saying. I've also, you're hyping me up.
Yeah, I am so hyped. So much happens. I think we should just dive right in.
Mm-hmm. Oh, actually, first, can I just say, I had a real 4D smell-o-vision experience while reading these chapters because I was sitting at the table and I was trying to read and also eat a bowl of yogurt. And Lola was next to me. And if I, stopped petting her for maybe more than 3 to 5 seconds, she would poke me with her claws. So I was being hounded by wild beasts, just like Gregor and his friends.
That's great.
Thanks.
That's really good.
Helped me feel immersed in the situation.
Yeah, Lola is such a good reading buddy.
Yeah.
Where we left off, Gregor had just overheard Mange and Lapblood talking about their pups back home who are dead or dying. Gregor wakes up and realizes he has to apologize to the rats for saying they probably don't even like their own pups, especially since Lapblood saved Boots from the poison frogs. At first he considers trying to talk to Lapblood privately, then remembers how his dad says that if you do something wrong to someone in public, you should admit it in public too. It's difficult for Gregor to say sorry, so he starts by thanking Lapblood for saving Boots. She says, forget it, and although he notes that she doesn't thank him in return for saving her from the frog, he makes himself apologize for what he said the day before. Lapblood and Mange don't respond, but Gregor is glad he said it anyway. I have literally been in situations where I have, said something awful to someone or, embarrassed them without meaning to or whatever, and my first thought is always, oh my god, I need to, talk to them and, tell them that I'm sorry, but, I have to wait until there's no one else around. But then I'll remember this scene, and I'll literally be like, if Gregor had the guts to apologize to Lapblood, then I can apologize to this person, right now instead of waiting till later.
That's great.
I'm thinking of at least 3 instances in my life where I'm this book has guided me.
Damn, that's impressive. No, I was just thinking wow, that's a great rule because I had never heard this and I'm always oh shit, I gotta think of the perfect thing to say and then I gotta go take them aside so nobody gets embarrassed. But it's no, it makes much more sense to just be yeah, sorry, I know that I fucked up. Yeah,
right away, and just admitting that you were wrong in front of everyone takes a lot of guts, but it's such a relief just to admit that you did something wrong.
I'll have to start doing that more.
Everyone gets ready to continue on the quest. Gregor brushes Boots' hair, thinking his mom would want him to keep her neat. He's such a good big brother.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that he's well, mom isn't here, and I want to do what she would want me to do and take care of Boots.
Yeah. And I feel this is the first time we've had, he always takes care of Boots, but that specific detail, I think, only appears in this book where, his mom is in the hospital and he's, extra thinking about it.
After he gets a big drink of water, the questers set off again. Hazard starts clicking to Temp in Crawler, and Boots joins in. The narration says, it turned out Temp was a natural teacher. He was endlessly patient and never critical. I love that bug. I love the detail about him being, endlessly patient, because not a lot of people are patient with Temp.
That's so true, yeah.
I think that he is so great for just, exhibiting this virtue of patience with the kids when so many other characters in this series are just always rushing and you have to make a decision now, or you have to you're not learning this fast enough or whatever, and here Temp is just being no, take your time. I just love that vibe from him.
Yeah, I feel we get a lot of Temp doing stuff, but we only get a few insights into how he thinks, or he'll say something to Gregor and I'll be oh shit, he's considering what he's doing, and I'm always interested when that happens.
Yeah, anytime we get a glimpse into that beautiful bug brain, it's a gift. Soon enough, Hazard, Boots, and Temp are speaking in a mix of English and Crawler. At lunch, Gregor finds the bubblegum that Hamareth packed for him. Because Boots is too little to chew it, he gives her the shiny pink paper to play with, and she goes to show it to her friends. It's so cute. Gregor explains that the gum isn't food, but you can chew it and it tastes good. Hamnet tries it first and comments on how sweet it is. He's confused by how it doesn't diminish the more he chews it. The rats chew theirs without taking off the paper, and Ripred immediately swallows his by accident.
I love how he's like, I swallowed mine.
Mange's gets stuck between his teeth, but Lapblood is able to accomplish sustained chewing. Hamnet asks why it's called bubblegum, and Gregor blows a bubble to demonstrate. He pops it with a loud crack and makes everyone jump. This just takes me back to, like, the middle school cafeteria, where, like, the girls who knew how to make their gum crack like that would just, like, be the loudest people in the cafeteria. And I could never get my gum to do that.
Right? It took me so long I don't think I ever could do that. Just to blow a bubble was difficult.
Yeah. I had friends who, like, tried to teach me, like, how to make that really loud noise with it.
That's some good friends.
Yeah, but I was never able to replicate it. It's interesting that Gregor can.
Yeah. Cafeteria alpha. like he seems so shy and retiring, but if it's time to make some noise,
he knows how to assert dominance.
Yes.
As they walk on, the gum makes Gregor hungrier. He's also sweating a ton, so much that his socks, which he hasn't changed since he got to the Underland, are sodden.
Not good.
Ugh, can you just imagine how gross that would be? Also, he says that he doesn't, like, have any change of clothes, and I'm like, did Mareth not think to pack him any clothes?
Yeah, because when I first read that, I'm like, oh, because he only came with one outfit, but they have clothes.
Yeah, they should have given him some clothes to take.
Maybe they were just like, we can only take necessities in the forest, and like, but you have to have dry socks. All the, like, camping articles are always like, you should pack dry socks. Mm-hmm. I guess usually the problem is your feet getting too cold, but I feel like you can still get some weird shit happening.
Yeah, I don't know why Mareth forgot to pack him, like, clothes. Like, he remembered flashlights and water and bubblegum, but he couldn't, like, get anyone to be like, hey, so the warrior needs some clothes for his quest to save the Underland. Does anyone have a spare pair of pants?
They're still mad about the Bane thing. They're like, no, sorry, we're fresh out.
Gregor's knees start to buckle from exhaustion, so Hamnet takes the pack of medical supplies and lantern fuel. Hamnet mentions that Ripred told him about Gregor refusing to kill the Bane. He surprises Gregor by telling him it was a good decision, because if he had killed it, the rats wouldn't have agreed to come on this quest. Gregor is glad to have Hamnet's approval, but mentions that the Regalians hate what he did, so now he's disliked by the rats and the humans. Hamnet laughs and says, not everybody, Ripred clearly adores you. I don't know if he's being sarcastic, because on one level, it's very obvious that Ripred doesn't like Gregor, and because he keeps, like, making fun of him, and he clearly finds him annoying, but on another level, I think that Hamnet is able to, like, see through that and, like, actually recognize that Ripred admires Gregor's, like, attitude.
Yeah, I honestly think it's the second thing. Like, he is being guileless here. Mm-hmm. He's just like, yeah, obviously Ripred likes you. He tolerates you. He hasn't, like, tried to kill you yet.
Yeah. That's a lot for Ripred, I guess. I just want to know, like, what Ripred said to Hamnet when they were talking about the Bane. Was Ripred like, ooh, this idiot Gregor didn't kill the Bane and brought it to me instead, and that was such a shitty move? Or, like, was he, like, more genuine about it and was like, actually, it was kind of smart?
I think it's the first thing, but Hamnet could, like, tell. He was like, you thought that was a good move, too.
I think that's likely, yeah.
Ripred's like, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this word right, but, you know, tsundere from anime.
Tsundere?
Is that how it's pronounced?
I think so.
Okay, because I used to say tsundeer, and I'm like, I know that's not right.
Yeah, I think it's tsundere.
Tsundere.
Tsundere, a Japanese term for a character development process that depicts a character with an initially harsh personality who gradually reveals a warmer, friendlier side over time. I don't know.
Anyway, Ripred.
I'm sure the audience have some opinions about that take.
Please do share.
Gregor doesn't believe what Hamnet says and says Ripred's probably thinking about eating him. Ripred calls from the back of the line, might be if you were something besides skin and bones.
I love that Ripred was listening to this whole conversation and didn't like respond to the adores you thing. He was just like, beneath me. But when Gregor says something, he needs to fire a shot back.
Yeah, literally. Gregor pops his gum again, and Ripred says, "Cut that out." I love that whole exchange, honestly.
Yeah, I love how Ripred gets like legit mad about the gum. He's like, it's important for our survival. We can't make excess noise. It's not just because I don't like it. You need to stop popping the gum. It's crucial for the mission that you stop popping your bubble gum.
I love that Gregor does it, even though Ripred has already told him not to, and he's doing it on purpose to annoy him.
Yeah, true.
Like, Gregor gets his, shots in where he can. When they find a place to make camp for the night, Gregor lies down on the ground, without even spreading a blanket or taking off his backpack or sword belt. I have so many typos in my notes. I was taking these notes at 2 a.m. last night.
After you were reading Foxhole Court stuff for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I was taking my sweet time with these notes, and by the time I finished, it was very late at night. So I feel like as we go on, the notes are going to get maybe a little more unhinged.
I think that'll appropriately replicate the experience of these chapters as they get more and more dehydrated.
You know what? You're totally right. Actually, I did it on purpose.
Yes. Method podcasting. Ripred
tells Hamnet that they have to find food and says, "Look at the warrior." Cut to Gregor staring at the pattern on a leaf, unable to take his eyes off it.
I did. I looked up symptoms of heat stroke and heat exhaustion for this, and this was interesting to me. So there's heat stroke and heat exhaustion. Heat exhaustion is when it's it kind of sucks. You're feeling dizzy, you're feeling thirsty, heavy sweating, according to this one infographic. And it's get them some cool water, loosen their clothes, seek medical help if the situation doesn't improve. But what Gregor has is heat stroke, which is all that plus confusion and dizziness, which he definitely has. And I like that the infographic for that has in big letters, "Call 911." So I'm just take some water, man. It's nope, we're kind of past that, but there's nothing else that they can do. So it just sucks.
Yeah, Gregor just has to keep lying there. Damn. The narration says, possibly Gregor had stopped breathing entirely and the heavy air was just drifting in and out of his lungs whenever it felt like it. Which is such a good description.
Yeah.
I think even though a lot of this book is just walking through the jungle, Suzanne Collins does a really good job of illustrating what that's like and really makes you feel like you're there.
Yeah, just the thirst parts alone. Yeah, it's very immersive.
Before Hamnet goes off to forage with Ripred, Hamnet tips up Gregor's head to help him drink water and touches his forehead, which strikes Gregor as a very paternal gesture. Gregor refocuses after a while and notes that Nike is fast asleep nearby, with the water bag still strapped to her back. Gregor helps the rats drink some water because they can't open the stoppers on the bags by themselves. Gregor pours some into Mange and Lapblood's mouths, careful not to wash down Lapblood's gum. I love that he's first of all, considerate enough to be the rats can't drink the water on their own, I have to help them.
Yeah.
And even though I don't really like them and they're mean, I gotta do this. And also, I might as well make sure that Lapblood can keep her gum.
Yeah, I like that he noticed. The rats weren't hey, we can't open these. Because they would never tell him that.
Right, they wouldn't ask.
But he just was nope, they can't do that. And he just noticed that by himself.
Yeah,
Smart boy.
I love that. Mange complains about Hamnet's rule that they don't eat anything from the jungle, saying that, as a human, Hamnet wouldn't be able to smell the difference between what's poisonous and what's edible, but the rats can. Mange and Lapblood decide they're going to follow their noses to something they think is edible, and they tell Gregor if he doesn't come with, they won't share what they find. Gregor brings up Hamnet's warning about how the plants could attack them, but Mange points out that they've all trampled over the jungle plenty without consequences so far. Worried about Boots going hungry, Gregor reluctantly joins them. Temp warns them not to go, but they all ignore him.
Uh-huh.
Have you learned nothing?
Even Gregor.
He's
trying to be polite about it. He's no, don't worry, Temp.
We won't be gone long. It's can you just learn to listen to this bug?
Yeah. The prophetess Cassandra.
Yeah, Temp is cursed to always know that danger is coming, but not have a way to convey that danger to anyone, and no one believes him. There's a funny bit where the narration says, Gregor wished he had some breadcrumbs or something to leave a trail. Of course, if he had breadcrumbs, he wouldn't be looking for food, just sitting around eating breadcrumbs. Whatever.
Whatever. I love that part.
Yeah, I love when the narration is just whatever. Eventually, the three of them reach a clearing that smells sweet like ripe peaches. It's full of plants with long, leafy stems and big yellow pods with rosy fruit. Mange leans on one pod to reach the fruit, and the chapter ends with the pod lunging forward and swallowing him up.
Never a good sign. When somebody gets swallowed up by a giant pod in the forest, that's when you might realize something's not going well.
Yeah, that's when you might want to reconsider your choices.
And I don't know if you researched, but I did look up because I remembered that these are like pitcher plants. Are we going to talk more about that in the next chapter?
No, did you do some research?
Yes, I did some very brief. I think I still have the Wikipedia tab open. But yeah, these are pitcher plants, exist in real life, and they do actually, like mostly bugs, go into them and they fall in and they get dissolved. Pitcher plants are several different carnivorous plants that have modified leaves known as pitfall traps, a prey trapping mechanism featuring a deep cavity filled with digestive liquid. So these are real, and it's just larger versions of them in the Underland. And I was also wondering, because like they're going through the forest or the jungle and they're not really like encountering any other big animals. So I'm like, what are these pitcher plants eating if they were able to survive out here for so long? And the only conclusion I can come to is that Suzanne Collins has been hiding more horrifying giant bugs from us, and that there are giant mosquitoes and giant flies in the Underland.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
I would believe it for sure.
But also, I'm sure that once they get a nice succulent rat, they can survive for a while without any more food.
Yeah, probably.
And also, I think real life pitcher plants probably don't like entrap you with vines and seem weirdly sentient.
No, yeah, these are definitely like some Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors type plants.
Feed me. That's not how she sounded at all. Feed me, Seymour.
Yes. That's exactly what it sounded like in the movie.
Yeah.
All right, chapter 17. Laplood screams and leaps for the pod that engulfed Mange. A vine whips out and wraps around her waist. As soon as she severs the vine with her claws, the entire grove of plants goes wild. Gregor goes for his sword, but before he can draw it, vines twist around him. He expects his rager powers to kick in, but they don't. Gregor tries to yell for help, but the vines are squeezing him so tight he can barely speak. The plant pulls him toward one of the pods, and when the vine tightens around him again, he involuntarily coughs his gum into the mouth of the plant. The pod reacts to the gum by bubbling into pink goo. The vine loosens enough for him to shout at Laplood to spit her gum into the plant. She manages to do so, and the plants go into a frenzy and froth pink bubbles. Now with enough breath, Gregor shouts for help again. Nike appears with the water bag still on her back, and she tries to attack with her claws, but the plants eventually entangle her too. Just as Gregor is about to abandon hope, Ripred appears and says, "Now what have you done?"
Classic. Also, I love how this part, like, at first I was annoyed about the bubblegum thing, like, oh, the bubblegum saves them, that's such a deus ex machina. But in the end, I like that it is that, because it's like, Gregor, like, is powerless in this scenario. Like, he does not figure out a way out of this one. It's just dumb luck that he was chewing gum and then he coughed it up and that the plants would react that way. It's just like, yeah, the jungle will fuck you up if you're not really careful and or really lucky.
Yeah, and I think that's what Ripred gets at later in these chapters, is that they shouldn't be alive. Like, Gregor and Laplood should be dead from their stupidity, and it was just like luck. But yes, no, the gum is a little bit of like a deus ex machina of like, oh, it's magic gum that will make the plants start to froth pink bubbles.
You've never had that happen with bubblegum?
Ripred launches into a spin attack and shreds the plants. The narration says, Gregor couldn't help thinking of those gadgets they sold on TV that chopped up vegetables at the press of a button.
Oh my god. Ripred Ratatouille crossover. He's sick of his life of war. He goes to France. He meets Remy.
We've talked about this on the podcast before.
It's just so good.
We've definitely talked about Remy and Ripred on the podcast before. I feel like that was in like the first episode.
I think you're right, because the parallels are so obvious, and the romance that could blossom.
They're a match made in rat heaven.
Rat heaven. Ships with height difference.
That Tumblr post that's like, when you see character design where one of them is really big and one of them is really small. You know that the artist did not have God in mind when they designed them. Oh my god. I need someone to fucking write this crossover.
Yeah, if anyone's out there thinking they just haven't found their magnum opus yet, it could be Ratatouille.
Oh my god, that's good. Rip Ratatouille?
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Rip Ratatouille. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's their ship name?
Ooh.
Rip Remy.
Yeah, I think that one.
Rip Remy is good.
Yeah.
Or Remy Red.
Remy Red.
Red Remy.
Oh yeah, I think Red Remy could also work.
That could be good.
Or it could be like one of those where they get like a name that's not related to their names, like.
Oh yeah, like Raid Chef. Something like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like a... Anyway, we can move on. But
we can continue our crossover fanfiction off the air.
Yeah. I just got another one. A chef, boy, are my enemies in trouble. Thank you.
Yeah.
I really had to work for that one.
Good pull. Okay, where the fuck were we? Oh yeah, Gregor's comparing Rip Red to like a fucking slap chop.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. A food processor.
Mm-hmm.
He's the food processor of rats. Gregor falls to the ground, and a severed plant pod oozes goo that eats away at his boots like acid. Hamnet picks Gregor up, and when they get back to the campsite, he yanks off Gregor's boots and socks. He tells Hazard to rinse Gregor's toes while he checks on Nike, who has a broken claw. Ripred crashes in with Lapblood, who is still trying to crawl back for mange. He ends up having to pin her to the ground to keep her there. He says, "He's dead. I killed the plant that did it. The pod opened and what was left of his carcass fell out." Which is horrific.
Yeah, I remember that part, like when the plant first got mange, I was like, they can still save him. And I really expected, up until Rip Red describes his carcass, that it would all work out. Because it's just like, oh, his tail is still sticking out. But not only did he die, like, judging by the speed at which the acid eats through Gregor's boots, it hurt. Which is very fucked up.
Yeah, and the way that Ripred says carcass, like, you can just, like, imagine this mangled, like, rat body. It's disgusting and horrific. Ripred furiously asks whose idea it was to leave camp. Gregor explains what happened, and Ripred rants about how they were all given plenty of warning about the dangers of the jungle. He says, "How can I keep you alive if you won't even listen?" I was wondering if Ripred is feeling actually, like, kind of panicked about almost losing them.
That's what I was definitely thinking. Like, all this anger is just a cover for him being really afraid, and he can't control what happens to them.
Yeah, like, he's working so hard to try and keep them alive, especially Gregor. Mm-hmm. Like, Ripred has a vested interest in Gregor making it through these prophecies. He's definitely, like, annoyed at them for not following the rules, but it's aggravated by his fear that, like, something bad could have happened to them. And
yeah, I think it's when you wander away and get lost and your mom comes and find you and she's like, what the fuck is, not that this ever actually happened to me, but she's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And it's just like, she's just worried. She's just upset.
Yeah, she's just panicked. Exactly. That's Ripred. He's like a scared parent in this moment.
Yeah. Who has already lost his children once.
Right. I think that definitely adds to it, that in some ways Ripred, he would never admit it, but, like, he has taken Gregor under his wing in a way that is kind of, like, parental, like, parent-child relationship.
Definitely, yeah.
And that is, like, stirring some feelings for Ripred. God, I love that rat.
Yeah.
Hamnet tries to calm Ripred down, but Ripred can't stop fuming about how stupid they are for risking their lives and, by extension, the cure for the plague. That's true, too, that, like, without Gregor, this whole plague thing might be, like, it for the Underland.
Right. I mean, Ripred's always looking at the big picture, and here especially, he's like, damn.
Yeah. Hamnet tells Ripred to go have a little time out to calm down, but the rat keeps muttering to himself and intermittently throwing insults at Gregor and Lapblood.
Mutter, insult, or wasn't it something like, it was something like that?
It was like, he like mutters and then he, like, yells and insults them and he goes back to muttering and then he insults them again. Like,
yeah.
It's just comical.
I love that. I love, like, like Hamlet's trying really hard to keep calm. Like even, I guess it'll happen in a minute, but even when like they realize that they've lost all their water, he tells Hazard like, no, you did what I asked. It just turns out we don't have water. Like he's learned so much from like what he's done and what he's done in anger. And he's like, I need to keep calm at all costs. And Rip Red is just fucking over it. And and in order to not to have conflict with him, Hamlet's literally like, go sit over there.
Yeah.
Just go sit over there and calm down. I love that.
Yeah.
I was just thinking when you mentioned like Rip Red's panicking, I was thinking about how literally the symptoms of a panic attack can be like, it can be you're freaking out, but it also could just be like being really irritated or angry. So Rip Red's literally like over there just like freaking out. And yeah, so it's sad.
Oh, I would believe it. Mm-hmm. I love characters like that are just like, Lily and I were talking about this last episode, that I really love Rip Red and the kind of character he is, and I love the tropes that he exhibits when I see them in other characters also.
Yes, so much.
But if he was in real life, I would hate this guy.
Right, that's always how it is. It's like, I love reading about you, I love watching you suffer, but we cannot be friends.
Yeah, literally. I love characters who like lash out and are angry when they're upset, and like you know that they're upset and there's something underneath all of that that's like in pain.
Yes.
And then they're like lashing out.
I call this, I can't remember if I came up with this or if I saw it, but a toasted marshmallow. Like they're hard on the outside, they're soft on the inside, and you have to like crush them and break through them to like get those gooey feelings.
That is a beautiful metaphor.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
Exquisite. Yes. Rip Red is a lovely burnt marshmallow.
Yes.
And we are going to squish him in the chocolate and graham crackers of our hearts.
Yes. Yes.
Hazard goes to rinse pod acid out of Lapblood's eye while Hamnet applies medicine to Gregor's toes. Hazard says the water's almost gone, and Hamnet asks Nike where the water bags are. When Nike reveals she lost them to the murderous plants, Hamnet tries to stop Hazard from rinsing Lapblood's eye, but it's too late. The chapter ends with Hamnet declaring that they are completely out of water.
Very bad. But more importantly, I can now, do you want it now or in a little bit, I can bring up all the facts about dehydration that I've been.
Ooh, yeah, let's do it now.
Okay, let's do it.
Wait, actually, first I want to talk about how Hamnet and Hazard have this little scene at the end.
Oh, good. Okay, go for it.
Because you brought it up a little bit, and I didn't actually write it in my notes, but it is a really good little mini scene when Hazard is, like, using the last of the water, and Hamnet is like, no, stop, and it's too late, and Hazard is like, did I do something wrong? And Hamnet is like, no, you did what I asked, but we're out of water. And he's just like, that's such a good reaction. Like, other people might be angry at Hazard in that situation, even though it's not his fault. And like, Hamnet has the like perspective to be like, no, we all need to stay calm. He realizes that this very bad thing has happened, and he immediately is like, okay, the next most important thing is to not freak out.
Yeah, and he takes that time, like, he calms himself down and takes the time to, like, explain to Hazard that, no, he didn't do anything wrong, but here's what's happening. I just feel like that's such a moment. You can't do that automatically. That would take real practice to be able to do that in an emergency.
Under a high-pressure situation like this. I think Hazard and Hamnet are probably, like, very close and very practiced at handling intense situations together.
That's true.
From living in the jungle.
I was thinking about this, about just like, I'll have more to say later, but just how when Hamnet first went to live in the jungle, like he had to learn all this stuff. And then eventually he had to raise a child there, which would have been so stressful. Like, it doesn't seem like he raised him at all in the overland. Like,
no.
Yeah.
I don't think Hazard's ever been to the overland.
Dang. So yeah, he just has to like you have a 2-year-old who doesn't want to listen to anything you tell them. And you also have to make sure that they don't die in the jungle.
Right. Like, what kind of toddler was Hazard?
This is like a John Winchester situation, except he somehow miraculously did not immensely fuck up Hazard's psyche.
Hey everyone, it's Editing Oona with some context. Nate and I are talking about John Winchester from Supernatural, who is the dad of the protagonists. His wife died when his kids were young, and he raised them to hunt monsters, and he is largely believed to be a terrible father by the fans of the show. Yeah, you're right. Actually, the parallels are there. Because, like, Hazard's mom dies, and we don't know, like, when she died exactly, but the way that Hamnet talks about it in the next book, I think, he talks about how he was, like, there. So he, like, remembers, so it must have not been that long ago. So I guess Hamnet and Hazard's mom mom would have worked together to raise him in the jungle, which would have been a little bit easier than just Hamnet, but like still.
Yeah, he had to cope with the grief of losing his wife, and he has to raise Hazard on his own, and there's demons like pitcher plants that will absorb your entire body.
Wow.
Yeah.
Another crossover waiting to be written.
Oh my god.
Okay, let's hear about dehydration.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I knew before reading this that humans can go, I think, like 2 to 3 days without water. I know that it's way less than food, but I was intrigued, like, how long can the other characters go without water? And what I learned from trying to find out how long rats and bats can go without water is that the experience of fact finding on the internet has gotten much worse. So here's some of the things I found. First, I just Googled how long can rats live without water, and University of Hawaii system said 48 hours, which seems right. But then another source, Twin Home Experts, said rats can only survive within 5 to 7 days without food or water. Removing the walls is just a matter of a few days, which isn't really relevant, but I like removing the walls is just a matter of a few days. Very ominous.
Yeah, what?
I also just found, I was just scrolling through my search and I found like an automated Google answer of what do rats hate the most? And it mentioned lack of nutrition and comfort. So we know that Ripred is not having a good time right now. Also peppermint for some reason. And then I was also trying to find out how long bats could survive without food or water, which was even worse. First on r/bats, Flaco Just Tired 223 asked, how long do bats survive without water or food? And user Ferocious Sarah said, there are over 14,000 species of bats in the world. The answer will vary greatly depending on the kind of bat, whether or not it's hibernating, etc. And that is the only answer, which I think is a very Reddit experience. So we still don't know. But also I learned that rats do not sweat, but actually they control their body temperature by expanding and contracting the blood vessels in their tails. So that's what Ripred's been doing this whole time to keep cool.
Interesting. Well, thank you for going on that fact-finding journey.
Yes, even though no facts were really found, I still think we learned something.
We did.
So anyway, it seems like it would probably be pretty much equally rough for everybody. Because I was wondering, like, is Ripred does he have more stamina just because he can go for longer without water? And it doesn't seem like it. And it also seems like Nike just has a very pleasant and calm disposition, but is not suffering less.
All right, chapter 18. Ripred asks sarcastically how long they'll survive without water, and Hamnet says they're days away from a fresh spring. Gregor remembers he has some water and pulls out the bottle that Hamareth packed for him. It's not a lot, but it'll keep Boots and Hazard alive. Hamnet explains he and Ripred couldn't find any food, and when Gregor says that Mange thought the pod plant fruit was edible, Ripred says, oh, why don't I just pop back and grab us a bushel or two?
He's mad.
Yeah, and he's just like so good at sarcasm. I feel like sometimes authors try and write sassy characters and they just fall so flat. But like Ripred honestly has really good comments.
Yeah, I feel like the key is that his sarcasm comes from a place of anger, but he's not just angry, he also thinks he's better than the other person. So he manages to sound smug as well.
Yeah, it is kind of smug. When Hamnet tells Gregor he was smart to pack the water, Gregor says it was Hamareth who packed it for him. Hamnet asks, Hamareth, has he managed to stay alive all these years? Gregor tells him yes, but he lost a leg on the Bane trip. He realizes that Hamareth and Hamnet are about the same age and asks if they were friends. Hamnet says yes, and the narration says, he turned the bottle of water over in his hands, but didn't elaborate. And I can tell by the way you're looking at me that you know what I'm about to say.
I can just hear the Hamareth like dripping off your voice.
They were boyfriends.
Truly. Honestly, like, before I read this passage, I was like, yeah, that's cute. But after I read this, I'm like, no, yeah, all right, I get it a little bit, yeah.
Just the, like, he turned the bottle of water over in his hands but didn't elaborate. Like, that's so loaded. There's so much behind that. Like, we can't even have time to unpack all of that. Like...
Do you think he asked Hamareth to run away to the jungle with him and Hamareth said no?
Oh my god. Stop, I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry for real. I really don't even have, like, that many headcanons about this series. I'm pretty, like, content with what's like on the page in canon, and I like take it at face value, and I don't really come up with like a whole lot of headcanons outside of what's in the books. And Hamareth is like the exception to that. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel so strongly that they had such a special bond.
And Gregor can tell too, and he's just being polite and not bringing it up.
Yes. Because he's polite like that.
Yeah.
I will say, I will do a little counter argument here and say that later we're going to learn that it was Mareth who saved Hamnet's life at the Garden of the Hesperides.
Oh, shit.
So, like, Hamnet could be thinking specifically about that. Like, Mareth saved his life. But, like, also that's very romantic.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, no, it could definitely just be like they were friends and now he hasn't heard of him for so long. And the first thing he hears is like, oh, he's been, like, wounded very harshly and, like, presumably suffered a lot. Because I've been thinking a lot about Hamnet saying that he doesn't want to do any more harm. And I guess my thought is, like, he's not doing any harm. Maybe somebody says this later. Like, he's not doing any harm, but he's not doing anything good either. And while he's here, like, alleviating his own conscience, like, all his friends and his family are still, like, they're still fighting and they're still hurting people and they're still getting hurt. And he, like, he doesn't usually have to contend with that directly.
That is such a good point.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if anyone does say that in as many words, but, like, that's a really good way of putting it, is, like, yeah, he's not doing any more harm out in the jungle, but he's not really doing anything. He's just, like, avoiding his problems.
That's what I've been thinking about, because I was thinking, like, it's so hard to live without harm. But then I was like, no, it's not. Like, for one person, if they just, like, go away from everybody and reject everything, they can pretty much, like, fit their definition of not doing harm. But, like, he can't take all the Underlanders to the forest and be like, we're gonna be chill now. And if they would just end up, like, trampling the forest, like...
Right. Like, he could potentially be doing more good if he stayed and tried to change things in Regalia. Like, Hamnet is very passive. I think actually someone had just, like, replied to the episode, had left a comment on the episode. Yeah, someone was like, Ripred and Hamnet have a lot in common in that they both lost people at the Garden of the Hesperides, because that's where Ripred's family died. And they both had these... Like, I think in the 5th book, Ripred, when he's telling the story to Lizzie of how his family died, he says after that, I kind of went mad and just, like, went off into the Deadland and lived by myself. Right. Which is, like, also what Hamnet did in response to the tragedy. So I think that they are very much similar, but then this person in the comments was pointing out that Hamnet is very passive, where Ripred is very active. Like, Ripred is in it, like, trying to change things, and Hamnet just, like, wanted to disappear.
Yeah, like, Ripred, he left and he was upset, but he had a plan and he was working. And Hamnet doesn't really, until he is called upon to lead them through the forest, he is just planning to, like, indefinitely just avoid all that.
Right, and he almost didn't agree to lead them through the forest.
I didn't even remember that, yeah.
He was almost like, no, I'm not going to help you. And it's like, hey man, then you're doing more harm if you're not helping us find the cure to the plague.
Yeah.
Hamnet is such an interesting character. I could probably talk about him for hours and hours. Mm-hmm. Just, like, the intricacies. But what's important right now is to know that he and Mareth were boyfriends.
That is the key takeaway.
Like, seriously, the first thing when he hears Gregor say Mareth's name, he's like, has he managed to stay alive all these years? Just something about that wording is, like, very, I don't know, very intimate to me.
I was gonna say fond. Like, he's like, oh, he's always getting himself into scrapes. Scrapes.
Yes, it's very fond. Exactly. It's like he wasn't expecting him to make it this far, and he's glad to be reminded of Mareth and to know that he's alive, even if he's been injured. And there's so much there in these, like, this, like, one little section. There's so much.
Literally. She just, like, it's such a short book, but she just packs so much in.
Yeah, especially in these later books. Like, we're gonna have to start covering fewer chapters per episode because there is, like, so much in each chapter in the books ahead of us. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But anyway, that's my Hamareth agenda.
Yes.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I expect a uptick in fan art and fan fiction from this.
Stat.
Don't be afraid to tag me in it when you post it. I'll have it on my desk by Friday.
I love the confidence.
Gregor wants to ask about why Hamnet left Regalia 10 years ago, and then he remembers how Hamnet told Vicus that out here in the jungle he does no more harm. Hamnet says they should keep moving, and Ripred adds that he better not hear any complaints from Gregor or Lapblood. Hamnet puts medicine on Lapblood's eye, makes a splint for Nike's claw, and tries to give her pain medicine too, but she refuses, saying she doesn't want to muddy her thoughts. Hamnet convinces her to ride on Frill's back instead of fly, and Gregor apologizes to her for their current situation. Nike says cheerfully, "But why? Now I get to take a lovely nap while the rest of you walk. I should be thanking you." I love her attitude.
Uh-huh.
There aren't enough optimistic characters in these books.
Very true. Yeah, I feel like she's the only one on this quest who's optimistic at the very least.
Yeah. Boots doesn't count. She's an optimist about everything.
Courage doesn't count if you can't count.
Yes, exactly. And Nike is being so courageous, just like she's got a broken claw, she's dehydrated, she's starving, she has to get tied to the back of a lizard to just like go through the jungle, and she can fly but she can't land, so Hamnet's not gonna let her fly, and she's just like looking on the bright side, like, I get to take a nap.
Yeah, I was just thinking, did she, because she's Hamnet's Bond, right?
No, Nike.
Oh, no. Oh, wait, who is she? Is she Solovet's Bond?
No, she's no one's Bond.
Oh, wait, is she the Princess of Bats?
Yes, she's the daughter of the Queen Athena of the Bats.
Nice. That's so interesting that she's not really beholden to any of these people.
Yeah, she was just sent along to be like Gregor's ride, basically, as a replacement for Ares.
Oh, right. Oh, and I thought it was also partially like in case the princess of the quest is not referring to Boots.
That's right. Yeah, they also sent her as a backup princess.
Backup princess. That's my band name.
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting that like she's so like, I feel like, I mean, I don't know what being bat royalty is like, but you would think that the princess would be maybe more sheltered. Like Luxa doesn't know how to make a sandwich. Yeah. She's very tough, but like she obviously does not deal with a lot of real life. Like, but Nike is holding up so well on this quest and like being all stoic and be like, oh no, I don't need it. I need to keep my head clear.
Yeah.
Like, cause Hamna says that the bone to her claw is broken. Yeah. Which I'm like, ow. Like it keeps making me, every time I think about it, I'm like, ugh, that's not good.
Yeah, no, Nike is being such a champ about this. And I do wonder, like, what is her life like as a bat princess?
Right.
Because you would think just from when you first meet her and she's like, I'm the daughter of Queen Athena, and she's like sent as this kind of like, she's sent as the ride to like accompany Gregor, Boots, and Grace down to the Underland, and she kind of is like important or whatever, and you kind of think like, oh, is she gonna be, you know, a stereotypical princess, kind of snotty, like how Luxa was, like,
or her cousins from the Fount, even more so.
Exactly. Yeah, like doesn't have much experience with the real world, but Nike's just like rolling with it.
Yeah, she's the people's princess. She's the Diana of bats.
Yeah, no, I love Nike. That's my thesis statement.
Supported by lots of evidence.
Yeah, she's just great. I aspire to be like her in times of crisis, just like chill, looking on the bright side. Gregor's boots got destroyed by plant acid, so Hamnet gives him his reptile skin shoes to wear. Let's talk about shoes for a second.
All right.
I think this is quite symbolic.
Go on.
In my notes from 2 a.m. last night, I wrote, something, walk a mile in another man's shoes or whatever.
Wow. I agree completely.
I think what I was getting at is that, like, this is a turning point in their relationship, because after this, Hamnet is going to start being more open with Gregor. Mm-hmm. They're starting to get along more and kind of like see eye to eye more. And I think that the symbolism of Gregor having to shed his overland footwear and wear not just underland footwear, but like specifically of the jungle, like Hamnet's own thing that he has made to help him survive in the jungle and is giving like as a gift to Gregor. I think there's so much meaning behind that.
Yeah, totally.
And we know that clothing is kind of like an important thing to Gregor, because throughout the books they talk about how Gregor's clothing has holes in it, or it's like too big for him, or it's too small for him, or it's too old and threadbare, and like his shoes are falling apart because of his family's poverty, and clothing and shoes is like kind of a big deal to him.
Yeah, like I feel like he's had these boots for 2 books now, right? right?
Yeah.
And like multiple times he thinks like Gregor was sure glad that he was wearing these nice sturdy boots instead of his old sneakers.
Right. And they were given to him by Mrs. Cormacy as a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the end of this book, Mrs. Cormacy is going to give him another pair of shoes. And the very last part of the book is him realizing he still has his reptile shoes on and that he has to tell her about the Underland.
Yes. I was pretty sure that happened.
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot to unpack here. Also just that Hamnet like goes barefoot to help Gregor. And he dismisses it as like, well, I lived out here without shoes for a long time, so it's not a big deal to me. But he's like willingly giving up a piece of protection to help Gregor.
Yeah, like obviously he wouldn't be wearing the shoes if it was like not more comfortable to wear shoes.
Yeah, and it's very parental. It's very protective.
Does Hamnet die at the end of these books?
Yes.
Okay.
He dies at the end of this book.
Oh, okay, because I was just, when you mentioned barefoot, for some reason, my first thought was just like Jesus. So now I assert that Hamnet is a Jesus figure for some reason.
I was also trying to come up with a Jesus thing because isn't like washing feet a thing in the Bible?
Yeah, totally. And in Death Note, but they were...
No, I definitely thought about that.
Yeah. Also, no, another random thing. This is not related at all. But one time I was like washing my dog Harper's feet because she had come inside from where it was muddy. And I was like, this is just like when Jesus washed the feet of the disciples or when they washed his feet. And then I wasn't sure. So I asked my dad, like, did Jesus wash the feet of his disciples? And his answer was, I don't know. What the hell would he do that for? Just my favorite thing he's ever said, maybe.
That's extremely iconic of him, actually. Oh my god. As a sign of humility and like respect, right? Like it's like...
Yeah, that, I mean, in Death Note, it's like Ella's admitting that he knows that light... Death Note spoilers, by the way. Ella's admitting that like he knows that light is going to win and he can't defeat him. So they specifically had to make that biblical allusion of like washing his feet.
Like he's submitting to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was also why Jesus, he was like, even though I'm the son of God, I'm still going to wash your feet.
Yeah, it's like humbling.
And I did read on a random blog that Suzanne Collins is Catholic. So maybe, and I don't know if that means like actively Catholic or like, but I don't want to speculate. But anyway, could be Jesus on purpose. Or even if she's not Catholic, could still be Jesus on purpose.
Yeah, because Jesus is a powerful literary figure.
Yeah.
Regardless of actual belief.
Yeah.
When you make a reference to the Bible, it's like, oh yeah. We know what that is.
We know what that's all about.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that. I was like, isn't this a Jesus thing?
Because he actually like cleans Gregor's feet with the medicine.
Exactly.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, I think there's something really intimate and caring about washing someone's feet because it's, you know, a gross part of the body.
Right.
You got to be willing to get up in there.
Yep.
So yeah. So I was just thinking like there's a lot of symbolism going on in this exchange of footwear.
Yeah, dang. That's really, like we keep saying, but this book really does pack so much into such a short amount of words.
Right? When Gregor sees that Lapblood hasn't moved, he goes over and coaxes her to get up so they can keep moving. She doesn't say anything, but she goes to stand in line behind Frill. Gregor remembers how in shock he was after he thought Boots died, and how Luxa couldn't speak after Henry died, so he decides to leave Lapblood alone. I do like this part.
Mm-hmm. He's like, he knows that nothing he says right now can help.
Yeah, and even if he says something, it might not even register to her.
Yeah, but she just keeps, like, robotically keeps going.
Yeah. I like that Gregor has the ability to look at what Lapblood is experiencing and empathize and think back to moments that like he experienced the same thing or his friend experienced the same thing and kind of like apply that knowledge to what Lapblood is now experiencing despite her being a rat.
Yeah.
Well, before the group had been traveling along a narrow path through the jungle, now it's disappeared entirely, making it even more difficult to navigate. Gregor finds it's easier to walk in Hamnet's lizard shoes, but soon the acid burns on his toes start to hurt a lot. He keeps his mouth shut, though, because he doesn't want to get yelled at by Rip Red again. After 4 hours, the kids wake up, and Boots is upset that there's nothing to drink. She gulps down what Hamnet gives her from the water bottle, but she's still thirsty and confused. After a while of Boots asking for water and juice, Gregor finally snaps at her, and she bursts into tears. Finally, Hamnet gives her some more water and she falls back asleep. But Gregor's toes ache, and Rip Red keeps taunting him about how his Rager powers didn't activate when he needed them to this time. I think this is actually some of the most brutal stuff that we've heard from Rip Red so far.
Uh-huh.
Like, he mocks Gregor for what he said to him in, like, his moment of desperation after the frog incident.
What was it that he said? Like, I don't want
this gift, Rip Red. And then he, like, taunts him with it. He's like, I don't want this gift, Rip Red.
Damn.
That is so mean.
Yeah.
That cuts deep.
I didn't even remember, like, what context he said that in, but yeah.
Yeah, and Gregor, like, said that to Rip Red in a moment of extreme vulnerability, and now Rip Red is, like, tossing his words back at him in a mocking tone and calling him weak.
Yeah.
Like, that's more brutal than I think we have seen from Rip Red so far.
I think you're right. Like, I feel like usually he wouldn't bring something like that up that somebody had said to him.
Yeah. It's especially disappointing because in that scene, Gregor notes how empathetic Rip Red is being toward Gregor's situation and, like, trying to give him Rager advice and treating him genuinely instead of, like, making fun of him and being sarcastic. And we, like, glimpse past Rip Red's, like, hard exterior into what's underneath it all. And then now he's, like, turning around and using what was said in that scene as a way to be mean to Gregor.
Yeah.
And that's just extra devastating.
Yeah, but it's also, like, he has such insight into what Gregor's thinking, because Gregor hasn't said anything out loud, and just Rip Red just starts up behind him, like, oh, I know that now you wish you were stronger. Mm-hmm. Like, he knows exactly what he's thinking.
Yeah, he knows exactly what to say to make Gregor feel terrible.
And I feel like it's partly it's obviously just that Rip Red is still scared and upset.
Yeah.
But I think it's also, he's like, I'm gonna show him what happens. Like, he survived this, but I'm gonna make sure it still hurts.
Yeah, I think that's part of Rip Red's philosophy in the way that he teaches Gregor things, is that he's like, I'm gonna make sure this sticks in his head.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make sure he doesn't forget this mistake.
By using flashcards. Oh, no, sorry, trauma.
Yeah. Verbal abuse. Yeah, literally.
He could actually be a really good substitute teacher.
Hamnet tells Rip Red to stop, saying he knows he did not think well before he acted. Who among us has not been guilty of that? Certainly not you, certainly not me.
I didn't realize, but he and Rip Red know exactly what he's referring to.
Yeah, and that shuts Rip Red up.
Hamnet's also like, he's nicer about it, but he's also pulling out a deep cut.
Yeah. He's like, remember that time that I fucked up really bad and you have forgiven me since then? Okay, but then I was wondering, like, when he says, certainly not you, certainly not me, like, when he's talking about himself, he means how he fucked up at the Garden of the Hesperides.
Right.
But, like, does he know something about Rip Red that we don't know? Because Rip Red didn't have a hand in causing that tragedy.
That's true. I guess I assumed that, like, in all his years of doing stuff, Rip Red fucked up in some way.
Yeah, I guess I always just assumed Hamnet is, like, referring to, like, Rip Red must have had some mistakes in his long life of being a rager.
Yeah, but yeah, that is true. Like, is it, like, are we supposed to infer something, or is it just that, like, or could it be that Hamnet is referring to a specific mistake just out of his shared history with Rip Red and just we don't know it?
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out. I've always read it, like, just in general. Like, I don't think that he's thinking of a specific moment, but, like, he could be. We don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, what did Rip Red do?
Rat crimes.
Rip Red stops taunting Gregor, but Gregor knows he's right about how being a rager made him feel less afraid than he should have been. Gregor tries to figure out if there's a pattern to when he goes into rager mode and when he doesn't. He thinks maybe it has to do with how much time he has to register a threat, but then discards that idea when he remembers that the first time he used his powers was on the harmless blood balls in the arena. Gregor becomes disoriented and goes into a daze as the group continues through the jungle. And I'm not going to read that whole paragraph because it's almost like the whole page long, but the description of Gregor kind of like fading in and out of awareness is just excellent.
Yeah. When you said, like, she's so good at describing how it feels.
Yeah, it really makes you feel dazed along with him, like not entirely sure of his surroundings and what's going on and not sure how much time is passing and like the way that she describes Boots waking up and being upset, but then like just going completely still because she's so dehydrated. Just within the one paragraph, it like really illustrates what they're going through.
Yeah, and they just have to keep going. And what gets to me is that even like Rip Red starts to be affected, and Hamnet. Like, I feel like in the beginning of this chapter, in the beginning of this, like, thing that we've been doing, like, Rip Red and Hamnet are kind of the guys who are just, like, stronger than everybody else, and they can, like, keep going when everybody else needs to lay down, and that's very comforting. But in the end, it's like, nope, we're all...
Yeah, exactly. Finally, after an indeterminate number of days, Rip Red says he smells clean water. Why do I keep putting long-ass words in my notes? I'm like, future Oona will definitely be able to say that.
You should have, like, a pronunciation guide in there.
Gregor follows Rip Red and Lapblood toward the sound of water, but then Rip Red yells at him to get back. He looks down and finds himself sinking up to his knees in quicksand. Gregor remembers that quicksand is like water and you can float on top of it, but it's too late for him because the sand is already up to his thighs. Rip Red manages to float on the surface, but Lapblood is panicking and sinking rapidly. Gregor finds a vine to hold onto, but it snaps and sends him up to his waist in quicksand. He yells for Nike and the vines rustle, but it's not his fellow questers that emerge, it's a group of mice. And actually I will read this whole next paragraph because it's fucking incredible.
Yes.
Someone fell from high in the vines, spinning, flipping, landing neatly in the small space between two of the mice. And Gregor did recognize the newcomer. Her clothes were rags, her pale skin marred with bruises and cuts. A long, curved scar ran from her left temple to the tip of her chin, but she still wore that thin band of gold around her head, and those violet eyes. Well, he would know them anywhere. Gregor shouts with joy for Luxa and reaches out a hand for her help, but she doesn't save him. The chapter ends with Luxa crossing her arms and watching him sink up to his neck.
Stone cold.
Okay, a few episodes ago, John said that he thinks that the end of part 1 of this book, when Gregor finds a bug bite on the back of his mom's hand, and it means that she has the plague, John says that that's the greatest cliffhanger chapter in the series, but I think that this actually is the best.
I have to agree.
This scene is iconic to me. I can picture it so perfectly. The look on Luxa's face and the way that she's crossing her arms.
I remember you drew this one. Like, you have pictured it.
It's in my head, like, so well. Just, like, the jungle behind Luxa and Gregor, like, looking up at her and being so relieved, and then, like, the realization of, like, oh, she's not gonna save me. And, like, what could that mean? Why wouldn't she?
Right.
She has this wicked scar on her face now. She's changed. Like,
yeah.
What's happened to her in the time since we last saw her? It's everything to me.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, so that was the end of part 2, The Jungle.
Dang. One other note to end on, it just reminded me when Gregor, like, instantly knows what to do in the quicksand, because we all, like, I feel like at least every US kid, like, knows what to do when we encounter quicksand.
I know because of this book.
Oh, really? Oh, no, I just learned from other like, I feel like it was everywhere. Like, this is how you survive in quicksand. Remember, don't struggle, because that'll just make you sink faster. It just reminded me of this one, like, tweet or Tumblr post I saw that was like, I thought I would encounter quicksand way more in my daily life.
I also thought about that post when I read this part, because, like, literally this book prepared me for quicksand, and it's never come up, and I'm just, like, waiting for my moment.
Right, literally. And it's honestly tragic that Gregor does remember what to do, and it still doesn't save him.
Yeah. At least Rip Red's floating on his...
Yeah.
It doesn't say if he's on his back or his front. I assume his back.
True. I guess I imagine front, but that would put his nose pretty close to the water.
Yeah, I don't know.
I feel like he probably went in front first. I feel like front. I'm just imagining him, like, kind of pancaking.
Yeah, that makes more sense. I always pictured him on his back, though, like, with his nose in the air, and he's just, like, floating and being like, Luxa, help us.
He's like, what's your problem? And I like how I was thinking, I feel like we'll have to get more into this in later chapters, or you and other people have to get more into this, but how when Hamnet went into the forest, he, like, got rid of all his symbols, like, all his status of being a prince? Is he?
He was not part of the royal family.
Oh, what? Oh, wait. I thought he was Sullivan's kid.
Yeah, but they're not on the royal side of Lux's family.
Okay. Well, he got rid of all the trappings of Regalian civilization, but Luxa still has her crown.
Yes. Oh my god, let's talk about that.
Okay.
The fact that she keeps her crown is so amazing, and it just says so much about her that she's like committed to being the queen of Regalia.
Yeah.
Even in the most dire circumstances. Like, her clothes are rags, but she's still wearing the crown. Like, that is so important to her. And what she means to her people, what she means to herself. I love that she keeps the crown.
Yeah. She's just like, she knows. She's like, I'm not going to be here forever. I'm not going to be in this jungle forever. She has plans. She has a scheme.
Oh my god, I love her. Luke's is back!
Yeah!
After so long, Luke's is finally back.
Yes. And she is pissed.
Yeah. I can't wait to get to the resolution of this scene.
Well, yeah, cliffhanger for the podcast, too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Nate.
Thank you for having me. This was really good.
Yeah, these were some good chapters.
Yeah.
On next week's episode, we'll begin part 3, The Mirror, by covering chapter 19. Quick note before we sign off, I made it so that you can comment on episodes on Spotify.
Nice.
So please feel free to share any thoughts about the podcast in there. I'd love to hear from you.
I will also be reading those like a hungry dog.
Don't forget to follow us on Tumblr, Instagram, and wherever you're listening. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, fly you high.
Fly you high.